Joy, 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 joy to the world.
Yes, good morning, Mechanicsville. How you doing this morning?
Joy, joy, joy to the world. Joy, 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 joy to the world.
Yes, this is Don Curtis. Good morning. Good morning, Mechanicsville. What a great day this is for you and for me. Yes, we got a few more days left in 2017. Not too many, but just a couple or so. And we're going to just give God thanks and praise for all of his goodness towards us in 2017. Yes, it's joy to the world, hope and serenity. Good morning. Yes, good morning, Law, Maryland, Wilmington, Delaware. Yes, WBR FM in Wagon England. Good morning to you. Hope you had a great Merry Christmas. Looking forward to a great New Year's. Yes, good morning to our new listeners in Iowa, Canada. Good morning, London, England. Good morning to you, Washington, D.C. Ann Arbor, Michigan. Good morning to you, San Jose, California. Yes, we thank God for our regular listeners that listen to us on a regular basis. We also give God thanks for our new listeners as well. Good morning, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Repeat the sound of joy. Repeat the sound of joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Let us receive our King. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. Wonders of his love. Let us receive our King. Let us receive our King. Let us receive our King. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Wonders of his love. Wonders of his love. Wonders of his Heaven and nature sing. Heaven and nature sing. Heaven and nature. Let us receive our King.
Yes, joy to the world. I hope during your Christmas celebration that there was a great joy of being among family members and friends, and even if you were all by yourself, to know that you were not by yourself, but God was right there with you, and that you could rejoice just in the fact that you knew who God was, and you were just so ecstatic over the fact that God loved you. So it didn't make any difference that you had a whole crowd of people around you, or if you were there all by yourself, that you still enjoyed God's presence and God's gift towards you and towards me. And that regardless, that there was great joy. Yes, that's what this gospel really is all about. And we had been sharing this and talking about this just a day or two before Christmas, that the whole gospel message, what God intended for it to do in your life and in my life, was to produce great joy. For you and I to know that God desires for us to walk in his joy. In fact, it's the joy of the Lord that is your strength and my strength. It is what makes us strong, enable us to be able to face any adversity whatsoever, to be able to go through any difficult time whatsoever. In fact, not only just to get through it or go through it, but the joy of the Lord has this strange quality to it, in the sense that you are full of joy as you go through it. It's not that you don't have joy, but you're looking forward to it once you get through it. But no, the amazing thing about God's joy that he gives to you and to me is that we have this joy as we're going through it. Yes. And so this gospel, the preaching of the gospel is the preaching of joy. It's the preaching of good tidings, of great joy. It's just not a mediocre kind of joy, but it's great joy. In fact, it's good tidings. It is a great greeting towards you and to me. It is a great introduction. Isn't that a tremendous thing to know that the very introduction that God makes available to you and to me, that he reaches out to you and to me with, it introduces to us good tidings of great joy. Great joy is the introduction. It is the opening statements. Yes, remember when the angels appeared to the shepherds, they said, "Fear not." In other words, they were not anticipating this kind of introduction, this kind of encounter with God whatsoever, that they were afraid. And so the very first thing he had to say to them was, "Fear not." And the reason why you should not fear is because the very introduction, the very first beginnings of this new tremendous message, this gospel, is tidings of great joy, good tidings. In other words, the first things that come out of God's mouth towards you and towards me. His introductory remarks, what he initially says to you and to me. In other words, is good tidings of great joy. You know, your opening remarks kind of sets the stage for what you want to talk about. It sort of breaks the ice, so to speak. It sort of lays the groundwork for what you want to say, what you want to talk about. And isn't that an amazing truth for you and I to grab hold of, that God's way of setting the stage, so to speak, his way of laying some foundation for what he wants to say to you and to me, starts off with great tidings of great joy, good tidings of great joy. Yes, this I tell you, the more you and I really discover the greatness of this salvation, to discover, the greatness of our God, the greatness of who he is, the greatness of what he wants to say to you and to me, we're just blown away by this. I mean, he starts off by saying, "I don't want you to be fearful, have any kind of anxiety about nothing." What I want to say to you is going to start off by producing this great joy. Yes, it's good tidings of great joy. God's introductory remarks, his very first words that come out of his mouth, is designed to produce great joy. More than just calm you down or calm me down. It's more than just sort of getting us to just relax. It's more than that. It is to introduce us to great joy. Yes, great joy. He hasn't even gotten to the real issues of what he wants to confer to you and to me. This gospel is so phenomenal. Yes, that it starts off. I mean, the very first part of it is tidings of great joy. Yeah, to everybody shall be to all people. Yeah, everyone, whoever hears this, whenever you and I are hearing the actual, real gospel of God, God's gospel, it will start off by allaying any fears whatsoever. It will get rid of all anxieties. It will it will open up the possibilities of you and I experiencing great joy. Great joy. Somebody is supposed to be preaching the gospel, and they done got 2 or 3 minutes into their preaching, and there is no joy that's being elicit. There's no joy, in fact, not only illicit, but no joy that's being given out. You're not hearing the gospel. You're hearing some man's watering down of the gospel, some man's misunderstanding of the gospel, some man's other gospel, some other kind of message, some other kind of greeting. It is not God. It is not God's gospel. It is not God's message at all. I thank God for things like this. It helps you and it helps me to be able to discern the reality from the false, to be able to know what God's focus is in his speaking his gospel to you and to me, that your joy might be full. Jesus says, these things have I spoken unto you. These things have I said unto you. These things have I communicated to you, that my joy might remain in you and that your joy might be full. In other words, God's speaking to you, God's talking to you, is so that as a result of it, that his joy might be yours, and that there might be a fullness of joy that you experience on the inside of you. Yeah, that your joy might be full. That's what God's desires for you and for me, is to experience the fullness of our own joy, to experience his joy, that his joy might really, fulfill our joy. Yes, that's a great measuring stick. So that you'll know whether or not you're listening to God's gospel or someone else's gospel. If they're trying to get money out of you, if they're telling you that you got to plant a seed in their ministry, if they're telling you that you've got to give $1,000 or whatever. I heard a guy this past few days or whatnot talking about you know how you need to sow $1,000 into his ministry. That's not good news. That don't bring no joy to nobody. It's a misrepresentation of God's message that you've got to do something in order for God to be able to get back to you. That's not what these guys say. That's not what the angel's saying. I got good tidings of great joy. This is what you got to do so that God can bless you. No, that's not what this gospel message is all about. That's not what it is at all. Yeah. God desires for you and for me to experience this joy that's unspeakable and full of glory. I was speaking with someone not too long ago, in fact, a few days ago, and they were just sharing with me, in fact, it was Christmas Eve, that the Lord had done a marvelous thing for them in their health, and as they were thinking about it, they were experiencing this deep emotional joy on the inside of them. You see, I really can't even describe what it was like. All I know is it was just deep down in me, and I wanted to shout. I was ready to shout. And I said to the person, you experiencing God's joy. You're experiencing this joy that's unspeakable. You can't describe it. You can't put words to it. It's phenomenal. It's deep down on the inside of you. It's deep down on the inside of me. It's what Jesus said. In you will gush up rivers of living water. Yes, and so we see that this is what God desires for you and for me. Yes, we continue on, and even as Jesus' ministry was about ready to be over with, we see at the very beginning the announcement of his birth. Is accompanied with great tidings of good tidings of great joy. And then we see in John chapter 17, in fact, we'll see it throughout some of the other writings concerning him, but in John 17, when he is speaking to his father, praying to his father. And just before his betrayal, yeah, just before he's about ready to be betrayed by Judas, he's praying and he's speaking to his father. And he is saying, and now I come to thee, and these things have I speak in the world, that they might have my joy fulfilled in themselves. He said he's speaking to his father, and we're hearing this. He says that these things have I spoken to the world. I've been speaking in this world, that they might have my joy fulfilled in them. Isn't that an amazing thing that Jesus was, as he was moving around throughout his ministry, that the thing that he had on his mind was that the persons that he was interacting with, and even others all around him, that they might experience his joy, that his joy might be fulfilled in them. And, well, how can that be? Well, all of what he was doing, all of what he represented, the gospel that he preached, yes, and then the gospel that he lived. The very fact that he says, look, if you see me, you see the Father. The very fact that he knew that he was the personification, he was the actual manifestation, the demonstration. He was actually God in the flesh. He knew who he was. And his desire was that persons might come to embrace him, and as a result of that, have his joy fulfilled in them. In other words, this man was full of joy. This man was overflowing with joy. He knew who his father was. He knew his father's heart towards every single person all around him. That's why he so easily would interact with whosoever they were. Doesn't make any difference who they were, sinners, publicans, tax collectors. It didn't make any difference. It didn't make any difference who they were. It didn't make any difference what station of life they were in. It didn't make any difference what they had just got caught in. The woman that got caught in adultery, I mean, he interacted with her. He spoke with her. And he shared creative words with her. The woman at the well, the 10 lepers, the man that was blind, the man that was blind from birth, the man that had been laying beside the pool of Bethesda, different towns that he went in and healed everybody. I mean, he had no respect of persons whatsoever. And unless he had opened up his mouth and began to share like this, we would not have even known what his desire was, what his father's desire was. He said, look, I've been speaking these things into the world that they might have my joy fulfilled in themselves. Yeah, that the joy that he had, the joy that he was experiencing, the joy that was his. He wanted to share that with everybody that he came in contact with. He wanted them to be able to have his joy fulfilled in them. And I tell you that there's another wrinkle to this that I think is just so mind-blowing, and that is that he really didn't expect his joy to be full, to come to fruition, to max out, so to speak, until that same joy was in me and in you. In other words, the completeness of God's joy can only be complete when you and I are able to share in his joy. In other words, God cannot fully experience his own joy until you and I are able to be partakers of his joy. God desires for you and I to be filled with great joy. It's the joy of the Lord that is your strength, that gives a backbone to your life, that gives a backbone to your joy, to your happiness, to your fulfillment, to your purpose, to your relationship with him and your relationship with everybody else, to the point that God can't even be complete in his own joy. He can't max out his own joy without you participating in his joy. The only way that his joy can be fulfilled is when you and I receive his joy. I'm loving this because he's not saying my joy, and even though in other contexts he is saying that, he does say that your joy might be fulfilled, but he's saying his joy as well. In fact, if you really stop and consider it, the only way you can max out your joy is for God to max out his joy. And the only way God can max out his joy is for your joy to be maxed out. In other words, God can't sense his fulfillment until you know your fulfillment. In other words, your fulfillment is tied up in his fulfillment. His fulfillment is tied up into your fulfillment. God can't reach the max in his joy until you reach the max in your joy, because God wants to demonstrate to you and to me that there's no more distance between you and me, that you and I have become one with him. Aren't we the members of the body of Christ? So the head can't be in one place and the body someplace else. The head cannot be experiencing joy and the body misery. The head can only experience the fulfillment of his joy as the rest of his body, you and me, are having our joy fulfilled. This is this unique oneness that God desires to live out in you and in me. This is the mystery of the gospel. This is that it's Christ in you, the hope of glory. It's not Christ apart from you. It is not Christ rooting you on. It is not Christ there to help you out whenever you need some help. It is not him having him on the line that you can call him up when you need him. It's not that at all. The mystery of the gospel, the thing that's been hidden, and the thing that God wants to make known to you and to me is this. No, it is Christ inside of you. It is Christ living his life inside of you, you and him being joined together, becoming one spirit, so that now you are a vital, real member of his body, that you are united together with him, that you are one with him, that whatever the head is experiencing, you are experiencing. However the head is described, so you are described, because as he is right now, so are you. And if his joy is fulfilled in you, then your joy becomes fulfilled. And vice versa, if your joy is fulfilled, then his joy is fulfilled as well. Isn't that major? That his joy is based on your joy. Your joy is based on his joy. That God so designed you and God has so made you that you could experience divine joy. You can receive this kind of joy on the inside of you right now. In fact, some of you might be experiencing it right now. You might be able to sense the river of life flowing, bubbling up on the inside of you as you think about and meditate on the fact that God has so designed things in such a way that his own joy, he can't be complete. He can't have his joy capped off, maximized, fulfilled outside of you. Yes, that my joy might be fulfilled. Listen to this. In themselves. Not that his joy is fulfilled in his own self. No. And he wants to give this to you. No, it's more than that. It's the fact that his joy cannot be fulfilled outside of you and outside of me. That we have been made, and this is part of God's purpose for your life. Yeah, that you might experience the fullness of his joy in you, and you might have your own joy fulfilled. This is part of his purpose, is for you and me to understand and realize that God's own joy can only be fulfilled, can only come to its full capacity in you. That's why Jesus was saying what he was saying. That's why Jesus was doing what he's doing. He said, look, I really can't experience the maximum of my joy until I share this with you. It reminds me almost of that seed that he referred himself to. If this seed remains alone, that's all it is. It's just that. But if the seed die, if the seed be put in the earth and it dies, it shall bring forth much. And that's what is happening in you and in me as a result of his death, his dying on your behalf and my behalf. Now what is being maximized in you and in me is the greatness of his love, the greatness of his joy, the greatness of his peace, the greatness of his righteousness, the greatness of who he is, because he's no longer abiding by himself. Now he's abiding in you and with me, in so many persons around this world. This is the mystery of the gospel. This gospel is about God's great joy, his great passion for you and for me to be able to experience, to live in this great joy, for God's joy to remain in us, that there be nothing that could persuade you, nothing that can rob you, nothing can steal from you this great joy that God has given to you and to me. And your enemy and my enemy will do whatever he can to rob us of this great joy. It's the first thing he goes after, because if he can steal your joy, you become weak. Yes, you become an easy prey for him. And that's why Jesus said, I'm speaking these things that my joy might remain in you, that you and I listen to him. Don't listen to these don't listen to anybody that's not speaking about Christ, that's not revealing Christ the way he needs to be revealed, that would overshadow what Christ is saying himself. He's saying, look, my intent, my purpose, my speaking to you is that your joy might be full. And so guess what? If you find somebody who's disappointed, downhearted, brokenhearted, depressed, and what they need is joy, what they really need to hear is what God is saying to them, what Jesus is speaking to them. They need to hear the words of God, because the words of God, as Jesus said, they are spirit in their life. They're designed to produce great joy. I mean, if the angels that announce his coming, if the angels themselves started off by saying, wait a minute, fear not, for we have come to give you good tidings of great joy. If that's what the angels said, and they were just messengers, what does the real message say? What does Christ himself have to say? If angels can say that, what can he say? And what will he say? And he tells us himself that, look, I speak into the world that they might have my joy fulfilled in themselves. Mm-hmm. Yes. It just introduces us to this. And that's why he invites us. That's why he invites you and invites me to take his yoke upon us. In other words, to yoke up with him, to hook up with him, to be tied together with him. And he said, and come and learn of me. He said, if you learn of me, you'll find something miraculous happening on the inside of you. You'll find great peace. Your soul, your emotions, your feelings, all of these things, these thoughts and whatnot, they'll calm down, and they'll find themselves overcome by the peace of God, the joy of God. He says, learn of me, for I'm meek and lowly in heart. You'll find rest. Yes, you'll find rest. You'll find rest. You'll find rest. Yes, and so it's this great joy, I mean, what a tremendous thought. What a tremendous, more than a thought. You know, it's more than a thought. A thought can come and go. But the truth stands. This is the same truth that he spoke some 2,000 years ago, and it's standing. It's standing for whosoever will. Whosoever will listen to him, whosoever will take time and really hear what he is saying. He says, I'm speaking. Guess what? If he's speaking, I'm listening. If he's speaking so that his joy might be fulfilled in us, guess what? I'm listening so that his joy might be fulfilled in me. I'm listening. And I just give God thanks. I'm able to share with those who want to listen what I've heard, so that his joy might be fulfilled in you, and that his joy might remain in me. So nothing will steal his joy out of my heart. And by the grace of God, I might plant seeds of great joy in your heart. Yeah. Yes, joy to the world. Yes, not judgment and condemnation and fear. No, he says, put that aside. I've not come to do that. I've come so that your joy might be full. I said, if I can't do that, then my joy won't be full. Jesus said, I can't rejoice until you rejoice. I can't shout until you shout. I can't experience this great joy until you experience this great joy. God wants you today, right now, for you and I to walk in this great joy so that his joy might be fulfilled. Is that a great understanding of your purpose? A part of God's purpose and desire for you is that your life might be absolutely full, overflowing with his joy, that he might be able to fulfill his joy in you. Yeah, let heaven and nature sing. Let everybody sing. Because this message is for you and for me. It's good news of great tidings to all people.
Heaven and nature sing. Let us receive our King. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. So much joy. Let men their souls employ. While fields and floods, rock hills and plains, repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Let us receive our King. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations move. The glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. Wonders of his love. Let us receive our King. Let us receive our King. Let us receive our King. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Wonders of his love. Wonders of his love. Wonders of his love. Heaven and nature sing. Heaven and nature sing. Heaven and nature. Let us receive our King.
Good morning, Mechanicsville. Good morning to you. Keep your company, keep your neighborhood in your prayers and thoughts and whatnot. Everybody you see, wish them a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.